Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are opening a file that is, well, usually when we talk about a breakdown of trust on this show, we're talking about something abstract.
Right, like institutional trust.
Exactly, losing faith in the economy or the media or institutions in a general sense. But
Yeah.
today we're looking at what happens when that breakdown is visceral, when it's physical.
When it happens inside your own body.
Yeah.
It really is a case study in what I'd call radical skepticism. We're looking at a document titled Excerpts from a True Story with a Deceptive Doctor.
And this was finalized in February 2021.
Right. And on the surface, if you just glance at the first page, it looks like a patient complaint file. It's a first-person narrative from a man who spent 15 years in the psychiatric medical system.
But calling this a complaint feels kind of like, I don't know, calling Moby Dick a story about a fishing trip.
Yeah.
It just misses the scale of the thing entirely.
Completely. I mean, this isn't just about a bad prescription or a rude bedside manner. This is a document where the author explicitly labels his doctor a charlatan, a deceiver.
He uses the Arabic term dajjal,
Yes.
and we really need to pause right there on that word, dajjal. Because for our listeners who might not be familiar with Islamic theology, that might just sound like he's calling the guy a liar.
Right, like a fraud or a scammer.
Exactly. But it carries way more weight than that, doesn't it?
Much, much heavier. In Islamic eschatology, Al-Masih ad-Dajjal is the false messiah. He's the antichrist figure, the ultimate deceiver who appears before the end of the world to lead humanity astray.
Wow.
He's a figure who mixes truth and falsehood so skillfully you literally can't tell them apart. So when this narrator calls his neurologist a Dajjal, he isn't just saying this guy is incompetent.
He's framing his doctor as an agent of cosmic evil.
Exactly. It's a theological indictment.
It's intense. So our mission today for this deep dive is to trace that line. We need to figure out how a guy goes from a bad checkup in 2005 to believing that his doctor is a figure of apocalyptic evil.
And not just the doctor, that satellites are fake, that insulin is a scam.
Right. We're going to map the anatomy of a conspiracy theory today. We want to see how a personal trauma, and make no mistake, as we read this text, it becomes incredibly clear this man suffered, how that trauma can completely shatter a person's epistemology.
How do you get to the point where you trust nothing except the dates you eat and the water you drink?
Exactly. But before we jump into the timeline, we do have to drop a massive disclaimer here.
Yes, very important.
The hook of this story is a patient who believes the medical system is a mafia designed to kill him slowly. He connects a prescription for Abilify to a grand unified theory of deception involving fake moon landings and climate change.
Right. So to be crystal clear for everyone listening, we are analyzing the narrative. We are looking at the internal logic of the text.
We are absolutely not endorsing the medical advice.
No. Some of which, like his advice to stop insulin, is frankly lethal.
Nor are we validating his theories about space or physics or politics.
We are here to understand the psychology of the writer, not to validate his science. We are impartial observers of this document.
Okay, so let's wind the clock back. The text gives us a very specific timeline. It starts in 2005. This is his origin story, if you will.
It begins with a referral. And even this detail is loaded with retrospective suspicion for the narrator. He tells us the recommendation to see this doctor came from a close friend of his mother.
Right, and he notes specifically that this friend later started a charity.
Yeah.
And in the narrator's world, as we'll see later on, charity is not a benevolent term. It's a huge red flag.
He essentially implies, I should have known something was wrong from the start because she ended up running a charity.
It's like a retrospective red flag. He's looking backward and connecting dots that weren't there.
Exactly. But let's look at the patient himself in 2005. He gives us a very vulnerable picture of his mental state at the time. He was 22 years old. He describes himself as deeply religious. He mentions he started growing a beard in 2004, but he felt completely alienated.
This part was really interesting to me, and I want to dig into it a bit. He says he felt disconnected from his family, which is one thing, but he also felt disconnected from the religious groups he was associated with.
All right.
He specifically mentioned Salafists and the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, usually, if you're deeply religious and growing a beard, those groups are exactly where you find your community. Why do you feel isolated there?
That is the crucial question. He says he felt they were disconnected from reality.
Disconnected from reality.
Yeah. He felt that people who grew beards had a language different from human language.
Wow.
It suggests he was incredibly intellectual, perhaps over-analytical, and he just couldn't bridge the gap between his internal world and the social performance of religion around him.
He actually mentions writing a handwritten letter to these groups, trying to correct their mistakes, doesn't he?
He does. So you have to picture this. At 22 years old, he's already taking on the establishment. He's telling the established religious groups, you're doing it wrong.
So you see a young man who is very critical, very intense, but also feeling like a total outsider in his own community.
And this isolation led to academic delays, tension at home. His family sees a young man stalling in life. He's growing a beard, he's acting strange, he's writing letters to religious elders.
So the pressure cooker is really building. You have a young man under intense pressure, struggling with his studies, facing tension at home because of his appearance and his isolation.
Right.
And because of this pressure, he's sent to this doctor against his will.
He is forced into the system. And this brings us to the antagonist of the story, the doctor.
The Dajo.
The Doddle. The narrator paints a very vivid picture of this man. He describes him as a neurologist and psychiatrist who appeared outwardly clean, successful, and incredibly pious.
Yeah, he mentions the doctor was always ready for prayer, always in a state of ritual purity. He specifically notes the doctor would pray the Asr prayer before Maghrib and take more time than necessary.
Which the narrator found incredibly performative. Like a clean mountain on the outside is the exact phrase he uses.
But inside.
Corruption. The narrator describes the diagnostic method. And this is where the distrust really starts to fester. He claims the doctor asked leading questions.
Questions like, do you feel people are looking at you?
And do people talk about you?
Right. And the narrator admits quite candidly, I would have answered yes to anything.
He was suggestible. He says the doctor was good at deluding him through these questions.
But then we get to the physical exam, and this is where the narrator's interpretation of events becomes highly specific. He claims the doctor would place the stethoscope 5 or 6 centimeters above the heart to listen to the pulse and measure pressure.
Now, from a medical standpoint, checking a pulse or pressure isn't unusual. But the narrator views this as the doctor checking for an approaching stroke.
He was convinced the doctor was monitoring him not to prevent a stroke, but to see if one was imminent due to the stress or the meds.
Exactly.
But the detail that really stuck with me, and honestly I had to read this section twice just to make sure I understood what he was saying, is the hammer.
Ah, yes. The reflex hammer.
A standard tool in literally any neurological exam. You
Right.
tap the knee, you tap the elbow, you check the nervous system response.
That is not what the narrator saw. He mentions asking the doctor why he was doing it, and he claims the doctor evaded the question.
So the narrator filled in the blank. And this is where we see the confirmation bias really kick into high gear.
He believed the doctor was using the hammer to check if the drugs had successfully destroyed his joints yet.
Let's just pause on that logic for a second. It's terrifying. Imagine sitting in a doctor's office, and when he taps your knee, you don't think he's checking my reflexes. You think he's checking to see if his poison is working.
It's a total inversion of reality.
But wait, purely from a physics standpoint, a little rubber hammer isn't going to tell you if a joint is destroyed. Why would he latch onto that specific fear?
Because in his mind, the medication is a corrosive agent. He believes it's dissolving him from the inside out. So if the premise is the doctor is a deceiver, a dajjal, then every tool he uses must be a weapon.
Right?
The hammer can't just be a diagnostic tool, it has to be a way to measure the damage he's inflicting. It's a closed loop of logic. If the premise is the doctor is evil, then the conclusion that the hammer is a weapon makes perfect sense to him.
It really shows a complete inversion of the doctor-patient relationship. The tool of care becomes the tool of harm. And this belief didn't just happen overnight. It was built over 15 years of what he calls a whirlpool of medication.
And the list of medications in the text is extensive. We are talking about heavy hitters here.
Yeah, he lists them out. Abilify, Risperdal, Invega, Wellbutrin, Orap Forte, Ramixol, Echinocin, Biparidin.
That is a significant cocktail. We're talking antipsychotics, antidepressants, and medications specifically designed to treat the side effects of those other drugs.
And the narrator says Abilify was prescribed specifically because it was cheap. He mentions he's from a middle-income family.
He felt the doctor was making economic decisions for him, sending him to specific pharmacies for cheap drugs that were actually, in his view, harmful.
But the effect on him, he describes it as a psychological coma.
His description of the side effects is visceral. He talks about obesity, extreme thirst, a rapid heartbeat that he could hear in his ears.
He says he became robotic. He felt, in his words, flogs 1,000 times a day.
Flogged 1,000 times a day. That is a very specific, agonizing physical sensation. And this is where I think we can bring in some outside medical context to understand what he was actually feeling, because he wasn't hallucinating the pain.
What do you mean?
Well, one of the common and notoriously severe side effects of antipsychotics like Abilify or Risperdal is a condition called akathisia.
Akathisia.
Yes, it's an intense, unbearable sensation of inner restlessness. Patients describe it as feeling like they want to jump out of their own skin, or like their nerves are literally burning.
Wow.
It can absolutely feel like being whipped or flogged from the inside.
Oh, man. So when he says he felt flogged, he's describing a literal physiological reaction to the drug.
Exactly. And here is the profound tragedy of this whole situation. The doctor likely saw this restlessness, this physical agitation, and thought his mental agitation is getting worse. I need to up the dose or add a sedative like Akhenaten.
Oh, no.
Yes. But the narrator felt that pain and thought, this man is torturing me on purpose.
That is the disconnect right there. The doctor sees a symptom of the disease, but the patient sees a symptom of the cure. And because nobody sat down and explained akathisia to him.
He invented a conspiracy to explain it. He didn't have the medical vocabulary to say, I have akathisia, so he used the vocabulary he did have. I am being poisoned by a dadal.
That is just heartbreaking. He spent 15 years thinking this was just his life, until June 2020. The text frames this as the turning point.
It's a classic lift the veil moment. The narrator does something he had apparently never done before in 15 years. He reads the package insert for the Abilify.
It seems so simple, just reading the little folded paper in the box. But when you're in a psychological coma, as he describes it, you don't question authority, you just take the pill. But finally, he reads the paper, and what does he find?
He realizes that his symptoms, the thirst, the fatigue, the rapid heart rate, the difficulty swallowing, the vomiting, they aren't his illness. They are listed right there on the paper as documented side effects of the drug.
He realizes, wait, the things I'm suffering from are being caused by the thing that is supposed to cure me. That must have been a totally devastating realization.
It shifted his entire reality. He confronts the doctor via WhatsApp. The text actually includes the message he sent.
Yeah, he argues that his actual problem is just fear and anxiety, what he calls whispers, not the psychosis or the heavy conditions the drugs are typically treating.
He lists his symptoms to the doctor and says, 90% of what this drug treats, I don't have, but all the side effects, I have those.
And the doctor's response. This is the moment that seals the deal for the narrator, isn't it?
Completely. The doctor doesn't explain. He doesn't reassure him. He doesn't say, let's taper you off and try something else. He simply prescribes an antidepressant, Murdermash.
Which reinforces everything the narrator's starting to suspect. He literally says, I don't have depression. He sees this as the doctor just throwing another chemical blanket over him to keep him quiet.
And this is exactly where the medical mafia theory crystallizes. It's no longer just one bad doctor. The narrator outlines a conspiracy between three pillars: doctors, laboratories, and pharmacies.
The unholy trinity.
In his view, yes. He describes a very specific mechanism. Doctors send patients to specific labs. Those labs then rig the results.
Falsifying triglyceride levels or finding tumors where there aren't any.
Right, all to justify the treatment. Then the doctor sends the patient to a specific pharmacy to buy these drugs.
He calls it a slow kill. The goal isn't to heal you. It's to drain your money and keep you perpetually sick. He even claims a doctor admitted part of this to him, that doctors and labs agree on percentages.
Whether that conversation actually happened as interpreted, or if it was maybe a cynical joke by a frustrated doctor taken literally, we don't know. But for the narrator, it was ironclad confirmation. He believes they are all eating people's money unjustly.
But hold on a second. A conspiracy that big, involving every lab tech, every pharmacist in the country, wouldn't someone blow the whistle?
To us, that seems impossible. But remember his isolation. He views these groups as a guild, a solidarity of deceivers. And he actually tries to prove it. He goes to 2 other neurologists for a second opinion.
Which is the totally rational thing to do. If you doubt your doctor, you get a second opinion. But it doesn't go the way he hoped.
No. And this is a very common phenomenon in cases of deep institutional distrust. When the system tries to correct itself or offer a standard of care, it is viewed as collusion.
Because the first new doctor defends the original treatment. He says it's normal.
Which, to the narrator, just sounds like, I'm covering for my buddy.
Exactly. Then the second doctor tries to justify the original diagnosis. He suggests the illness might be cabeze.
Yes.
Cabeze. What exactly does that mean in this context?
It essentially translates to something pressing or heavy. It's often used culturally to describe a nightmare, like sleep paralysis or severe psychological pressure. The doctor was likely trying to find a culturally resonant term to explain severe depression or pressure on the mind to a patient who clearly wasn't responding to clinical terminology.
But the narrator mocks this term. He thinks the doctor is just making up words to justify keeping him on the drugs.
And there is that one line from one of the doctors that really sticks with him. We all have depression.
The narrator views that as straight-up gaslighting. He sees it as a tactic to normalize over-medication. He looks at the nurse and the doctor and thinks, "You're just trying to convince me that being drugged is the normal human condition."
He also mentions their reaction time. He says when he messaged them, they responded faster than lightning.
And to him, that was suspicious. He thinks, "Why are you so eager to talk to me? It must be a trap."
It is the flawless internal logic of the conspiracy. If they ignore you, they are arrogant and dismissive. If they respond quickly, they are desperate to keep you in the web. There is literally no winning.
So he concludes they are all in on it. And this brings us to the core philosophy of the text. He defines the enemy not just as incompetent doctors, but as the deceiver, the Jajal.
This is a crucial expansion of the theme. He takes a theological concept, the Antichrist, the great deceiver, and applies it to an entire professional class.
He lists their traits. They appear clean and successful.
Wolves in sheep's clothing.
Right. They know your weak points, poverty, illness, ignorance, and they exploit them.
And he has a very interesting theory about why they travel. He says they're always going to conferences or fellowships abroad.
Yet to the medical world, that's just professional development, keeping up with the science. But to the narrator, it's rotating the scam.
Exactly. You leave town so a new deceiver can come in and milk the patients, and you go do the same thing elsewhere. He says they act as if they didn't learn anything in their own countries.
It is a total reinterpretation of professional norms. Everything is viewed through the lens of malice. But he doesn't stop at neurologists or psychiatrists. He widens the net. And he gets very specific about who else is a deceiver in his eyes.
He does. He has a particularly virulent attack on male OBGYNs.
Yes, that part was jarring. He prays for the paralysis of every hand extended to a lady without right.
He sees the entire profession of male doctors treating women as fundamentally corrupt and immoral. It's an intersection of his deep religious conservatism and his newfound medical paranoia.
And he also goes after herbalists and religious healers, which really surprised me. You would think if he hates modern medicine so much, he would run straight to the alternative stuff.
That is a fascinating nuance in his worldview. He attacks ignorant herbalists and those who use the Quran or Sunnah for profit.
He sees them as just another side of the exact same coin. People exploiting the desperate.
Right. He advocates for every Muslim being his own doctor.
Autonomy. Radical autonomy.
Precisely. Trust no one who charges you money for a cure. He also targets charities. He views them as money-making scams.
He says true charity should be secret. If you are announcing it, you are a deceiver. He specifically says the abundance of charity accounts distracts people and gives opportunity for fraud.
And what about politicians and the media?
He dismisses them entirely. He says leave politics to the politicians. He dismisses revolutions, specifically the Arab Spring era events, as pure manipulation.
He believes that stability, as long as the call to prayer is raised, is what matters. Anything else is just people being played by the deceivers to create chaos.
Okay, so we have the medical mafia, we have the deceivers in society at large. And then he goes global. He introduces this concept of fankoush.
Fankoush. It is a brilliant cultural reference, honestly. It refers to a famous Egyptian movie starring the actor Adel Imam.
I love this word, but we definitely need to define it for the listener who hasn't seen 1980s Egyptian cinema.
Right. In the film, fankoush was this product that was hyped up. It was marketed to everyone. Everyone was talking about it. People were desperate for it. But it was essentially nothing. Pure illusion. A fake.
Vaporware.
Exactly. And he applies this fankoush label to, well, basically all of modern science.
He really does. And this is where we see the epistemological break we talked about earlier.
Yes.
Explain that term for us again.
Epistemology is simply how we know what we know. Most of us trust experts. We trust the doctor about our blood test, we trust the meteorologist about the rain, and we trust NASA about the stars. We don't have a particle accelerator in our backyard, so we trust the physicists.
But the narrator has decided that the expert right in front of him, the doctor, is a liar, a dajjal.
So once that domino falls,
all the other dominoes fall.
Exactly. If the authority figure you can see is lying to you, then the authority figures you can't see must be lying too. The deception must be universal.
Let's start with climate change. He has a very specific, almost sci-fi theory here.
He claims the climate change from 2010 to 2017. And why? Not carbon emissions, not global warming. He believes there was a destruction of nuclear energy event in 2010.
He describes it as resembling thunder and lightning.
And he thinks the climate improved after 2017. He connects global weather patterns directly to these secretive, catastrophic events that he believes are being hidden from the public. He calls it destroying nuclear energy with the energy of thunderbolts.
It's almost mythological,
Yeah.
but then we look up space.
Space is the ultimate fankouche for him. He argues satellites simply do not exist.
I have to admit, I kind of love his proof for this. It is so intensely practical, yet so fundamentally wrong. He says, if satellites are real, why do we lose connection?
Exactly. He asks, if there is a multi-billion-dollar satellite beaming a signal directly down at me from space, why does my TV cut out when it rains?
Which, to be fair, is a question I ask my cable provider all the time.
It's a relatable frustration. But his answer isn't atmospheric interference or line-of-sight issues. His answer is, the dish on my roof is actually just an aerial antenna picking up ground signals from local towers. There is nothing in space.
So the whole GPS network, global telecommunications, weather satellites, it is all just ground-based towers disguised as space tech.
In his view, yes. He asks the reader, have you seen the fankouche that Adele Imam presented? That is better because they knew it was fankouche, but this fankouche we consider truth.
And because satellites are fake, space travel must be fake. He dismisses Mars and moon landings as Indian movies.
Meaning cheap fiction, highly dramatized, unrealistic special effects. He believes that NASA, the moon landing, the Mars rovers, it's all a production designed to make us feel small and dependent on the deceivers.
It's a way to reclaim power, isn't it? If space is fake, then the experts aren't actually smarter than him. They're just better liars.
It really shows how consistent his logic is. He isn't just picking random conspiracies out of a hat. He is rejecting expertise as a fundamental concept. Once you accept that the experts are lying to you about your own blood test, it is a very short leap to believing they are lying to you about the moon.
It's the shock of truth he talks about. He believes the truth is so shocking that the entire modern world is built on illusions that normal people simply refuse to believe.
Cognitive dissonance protects the deceivers. That's his view. People would rather believe the comforting lie than face the terrifying truth that nothing is real.
And we can't ignore the biological conspiracies he brings up.
No, he tackles viruses head-on. Hepatitis C, for example. He claims it is introduced via contaminated food or drugs intentionally.
And the treatment.
He claims the treatment is what actually entrenches the disease to make it permanent and contagious.
There's that slow kill concept again. The cure is the poison.
He views biological warfare as a constant, everyday reality. SARS, bird flu, Ebola, COVID-19. He sees all of them as failed biological wars against Muslims specifically.
He claims the epidemics only end when Muslims control it. He cites a visit by the Egyptian health minister to China as the real end of the pandemic.
He even mentions chemtrails.
Oh, right, the classic chemtrail theory.
But he puts his own spin on it. He dismisses the idea of high-altitude planes, leaving trails for weather control or mind control. Interestingly, he seems to think the trails themselves are just useless white stuff. He says they fly and leave something white behind.
So he's skeptical of the actual power of the planes, just as he's skeptical of their purpose. They're just another prop in the grand illusion.
Exactly.
So if the doctors are wolves, the pills are poison, the satellites are fake, and the viruses are weapons, what is the solution? How does he propose we survive in this world?
This brings us to section 5 of the outline, the cure. And this is where we have to be very, very careful and remind you, the listener, again, we are analyzing his worldview.
Yeah.
We are not giving medical advice.
Right. This is his true cure, not ours.
It starts with a total rejection of psychiatry. He believes mental illness is essentially waswas.
Was. Whispers from Satan or the self.
Right. It is a spiritual affliction, not a chemical imbalance.
So the cure must be spiritual and dietary.
Correct. He
Yeah.
outlines a very specific protocol. It is heavily rooted in traditional Islamic medicine, prophetic medicine, but applied with a rigid, almost prescription-like intensity.
Like the black seed, Nigella sativa.
Yes. A spoonful with every call to prayer. The adhan, that is 5 times a day. He views it as a universal cure and a toxin expeller.
And dates.
7 dates in the morning, specifically to expel toxins, magic, and drug residue from his system.
Honey and water?
Honey is cited as a cure for all people. and specifically drinking 1.5 to 2 liters of water daily, timed around the prayers.
And there are spiritual practices, too.
5 specific dhikr, or remembrances, morning and evening, and reading specific chapters of the Quran, Surah Ashar to clear the chest, and Surah al-Masad to destroy the deceivers.
It's a comprehensive ritual of purification. He's trying to purge the poison of the last 15 years from both his body and his soul. But then he gets the diabetes. And this is the part that is truly dangerous if someone were to follow it.
The text is explicit. He claims insulin is a scam.
His theory is that natural sugar from fruit and honey fights artificial sugar in the body.
Which is absolutely not how biology or endocrinology works.
No, it is not.
But in his logic, anything artificial, like synthesized insulin, is the enemy. It's Fankush. He explicitly advises stopping insulin and medication, eating fruit and honey, and drinking water. He genuinely believes the body will expel the sickness through urination.
He literally says, stop insulin.
Yeah.
That is a life-threatening command for a type 1 diabetic.
It is, and it really shows the profound tragedy of this level of distrust. Because he was hurt by one type of medication, he rejects all medication, even life-saving ones. He advises people to consult loved ones rather than professionals. He repeats, every Muslim is his own doctor.
It is a complete retreat into the tribe. Trust only those who love you. Everyone else, anyone in a white coat, is a potential wolf.
And that brings us to his final warnings. The text is framed as a desperate warning to the reader. He wants to save others from losing 15 years of their lives like he did.
He says, expose the deceivers. Scandal is the only cure for them.
He believes that the system is too protected by the government. He actually says the government controls them like a remote control. So legal or institutional reform is impossible. Public shame and scandal is the only weapon left to the common man.
He also touches on social media, which is interesting given how he distributes his message.
It's a double-edged sword for him. He believes social media since 2010 has been used by the deceivers to spread chaos and atheism, yet he is using it, WhatsApp, digital text sharing, to share his story.
He warns people to be careful of it, but he needs the platform to bypass the deceivers in the mainstream media.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into his world, what are we left with?
We are left with a tragedy, a deeply tragic cycle. Think about the trajectory. A bad medical experience, and let's assume the narrator really did have a terrible experience, that he was over-medicated, or that his very real side effects, like akathisia, were ignored by an arrogant doctor.
Right.
That experience led to a total institutional distrust. That distrust left a massive vacuum in his understanding of the world, and that vacuum was rapidly filled with dangerous alternative health beliefs and sweeping conspiracy theories.
It's a domino effect. Once you accept the doctor as a wolf, then the reflex hammer must be a weapon. The blood test must be rigged. The insulin must be fake.
It creates a hermetically sealed world. Any evidence to the contrary is just part of the deception. If a doctor argues with you, he is one of them. If he agrees with you, he is just trying to trick you. There is no way out of the logic loop once you're inside.
And the cost. The cost is immense. It's his health. It's his engagement with the real world. The cost is knowing what is actually true.
The narrator ends by asking for a return to religious simplicity. He wants autonomy above all else. He wants to strip away the complex, corrupt modern world and just exist with his dates, his water, and his prayers. It is fundamentally a plea for safety.
A true story with a deceptive doctor. It is not just a story about a doctor. It's a story about how we know what we know and what happens when the people we are supposed to trust break that trust.
It forces us to ask a really difficult question. How do we rebuild trust in expertise without falling into blind faith? Because for this narrator, that bridge hasn't just been burned, it's been blown up.
And that leads us to our final thought for you, the listener. The narrator asks us to consider the shock of truth. He believes we are living in a massive illusion. But let's flip that around for a second. How many things around you do you accept as absolute fact, simply because you haven't experienced the shock of seeing behind the curtain?
If you lost trust in the experts on the ground, the doctor, the mechanic, the teacher, would you eventually stop believing in the stars in the sky?
It's something to really mull over. Thank you for diving into this unique, first-hand account of radical skepticism with us.
It was a fascinating journey.
We will see you on the next Deep Dive. Stay curious.